peeling back the layers on like who Desmond is, what is his power, and like you said, and then where does that point to in our episode? That's the season. They'll be fun. There'll be developments. We're gonna tell you who Desmond is. We're gonna learn it with our sisters.
Hello, Blenders. It's Sean O'Connell, the managing editor of CinemaBlend and a co-host of the ReelBlend podcast, here to introduce you to another episode of ReelBlend, a special one dropping on a Wednesday for you guys as we head into Thanksgiving holiday and then the season beyond that. But there's so much stuff going on, and we're lucky enough to get a bunch of really exciting guests coming on the show, starting with Alison Schapker, who is the showrunner of the new show, Dune Prophecy, that is coming to HBO Max. So obviously, we've been big proponents of Dune. We love Denis. We've had this earlier this year when Dune Part 2 came out. We had Rebecca Ferguson came on the show. We had Denis came on, Hans Zimmer, and Greg Fraser to talk about the cinematography. And so we knew when this new Dune universe show was coming back around, they wanted to get somebody to come on to talk about it. The first episode dropped on Sunday, so you guys can catch up with that one. And I've been lucky enough to see a few of the episodes going forward, and I'll candidly admit to you that I thought the show got better with episode 2, and all of the storylines started to converge in a better way, because the first one was a lot of table setting and I was a little bit confused about who was who. There's a lot going on. I understand that they would like this to be a little bit Game of Thronesy, but set, in the Dune universe, not just on Arrakis, but going to a bunch of other planets. I think that's going to sort of work itself out. You'll figure that out from our conversation with Alison, who is the showrunner on the show and also has an incredible, rich history in working on television, both in the sort of short form episodes, but then getting into shows like Alias and Lost, and working at Bad Robot. And she tells some really great stories about that. So like I said, we're fans of Dune. Definitely wanted to check out Dune Prophecy. Want you guys to be able to check out Dune Prophecy. This is not very spoilery. We kept it to conversations for mostly the first episode, a little bit of episode 2, but nothing that gives anything away. Just wanted you to be able to get up to speed with Dune Prophecy, hear from Alison about her work on the show, and have a new ReelBlend interview as you wait for Friday. We'll talk about what's coming up on the show on Friday on the backside of this episode, on the backside of this interview. But here is Alison Schapker, the showrunner of Dune Prophecy, on the ReelBlend podcast. Well, I want to start here. So with the ReelBlend podcast, we like to get into the sort of nitty gritty of filmmaking and putting a show together like Dune Prophecy. And obviously the 2 Dune films have been 2 of our favorite movies up to this point. I'm thrilled to see how you are able to build out this world and all the intrigue that comes with it. I love this quote that it starts with, victory is celebrated in the light, but won in the darkness. I want you to take that quote and apply it to the arduous process of bringing a television show to life. What are some battles that you had to symbolically, quote, win in the darkness?
Yeah. Oh my God. I've never thought about it that way, but it's so true. Like, I mean, so much that goes into a television show is happening behind the scenes or in the shadows, as Sisterhood would say. And, it's such a massive endeavor with so many people, and you're trying to, channel everyone's creativity and kind of row the boat in the same direction. And, there's just a lot of personalities and a lot of passion go into a project like as big as this one. And, so yeah, whatever course corrections are happening is you're all trying to find, the way forward that excites everybody. I guess being a showrunner, there's always a crisis you didn't see coming, or there's always I always think of it as, I call it urgent emergent, like you thought your day was going to be one way, but then something else materializes. But I don't know, it's part of to me, what's fun about the job is kind of that multitasking quality.
I know in the world of television, generally speaking, you have different directors who have to step in for different episodes. I mean, like on an off chance, sometimes like Alfonso Cuarón just did all of the disclaimer show, but that's not really, doesn't really happen a lot. So I would argue that the showrunners are kind of the directors of the show in a way, because they have to keep the consistency of the tone all throughout the episodes. But I find it really interesting about bringing in different directors, because every director has a different voice. Every director works differently. So what are your conversations like? So you have 6 episodes here. I think there's 3 directors total. How do you keep a tone?
There was, significant overlap, like Anna Forrester, who came and directed the premiere episode, but also did the final block of the show and did episodes 5 and 6. So she directed the premiere, the penultimate, and the finale. So all very big episodes. And we worked very closely together in the sort of long prep process, looking at the sets together and the costumes together, and the lighting and the plans and how we were going to integrate visual effects. And it was great to have somebody with me through that process with a director's eye. And also what's great about Anna Forrester too is she's a former DP. So she brings a lot of cinematography, just like an eye for the frame that's very special. But then also she's become a wonderful director, and she cares about all the details. So I felt like I had a real partner in world building with her. But some of, I think, how you set the tone too is we were lucky enough to go to different planets. And so Richard Lewis, for example, who came in, he got to do all the world building on Lankavale, which is the Harkonnens' home planet. And you could say, Richard, what's so great is like you're going somewhere the show hasn't gone. So this is your piece to kind of like, let's dig in and world build together. And so everyone had kind of special parts to their episodes. And I think limiting it to 3 directors, was a nice balance. It was a nice balance between, me having different voices and different strengths and weaknesses and directors to work with, but not so many that you felt like you were constantly having to onboard a new person the whole way through.
That's what's interesting, because like you look at the Dune films, that's Denis films all the way through. And when you watch a show with different filmmakers, it feels like it's one voice. Could you argue the showrunners are like yourself, like directors?
So. Yes, in many ways, because we're yes. And we're seeing the project from the beginning to end, in the sense of like, we're in the writer's room, we're putting the scripts together. So when we hit production, we're really protective of story, and trying to build a vision in conjunction with story. And then also the showrunner takes the project through post-production in a way that the directors in television do their cuts, and then the showrunner sort of has their cuts. So I think by that nature, it's a little more, like you said, the showrunner is kind of a big hand of continuity.
So Alison, I want to keep our focus on episodes 1 and 2 potentially, because I want this to be able to run at a point where people can pay attention to it and listen to it without getting too far ahead. And in episode 1, we get the origin of what we now know as the voice, essentially. I just want to know how much experimentation you did before landing on the finished version of the audio that young Valia uses for it.
Oh, we definitely did some. I mean, there are things in the show, and I would say the voice is one of them, that we do feel like is in conjunction with what you're seeing in the films. Like, so like the voice as a Bene Gesserit skill, we're looking at the origin of it, but it is the same voice that will be continued to be this unlocked and used in the future. So, I think we wanted to leave room for it being the first time it emerges, like surprising and maybe not as in control as what you later see in the films. And and leave room for when it's mastered, it's a little more like clipped and it can be delivered in different tones and a little less like raw.
Yeah.
But we definitely took some inspiration from the film there. And, our actors who use the voice, for example, I don't think it'll come as a surprise to anyone that Valia Harkonnen uses the voice.
Right.
We would have Emily Watson or Jessica Barden in working with our sound design team, just recording all kinds of vocal layers that are going to be processed and blended together to try and, create that fierce commanding tone.
It's really cool. I like seeing the other actors react to it as well too.
Yeah.
It catches them off guard as well too.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's true. And they have to do some imagination because all they're getting on set is, somebody issuing one cry, but not the whole thing.
Right. Exactly.
You have the luxury with your show, which is exactly how TV I think should be, is the week to week release.
Yeah.
It keeps your show alive. People talk about it. It's appointment viewing. I mean, the shows you've worked on in the past, like Lost, and these are shows that people would wait for every single week. And we've gotten into a stage now with television. Luckily, a lot of them are going back. Like Apple's now week to week. I think Netflix is doing half and half. But a show kind of lives and dies in a weekend if you have to binge the whole thing. Can you speak about that perspective and kind of the idea of a week-to-week series, but also the art of a cliffhanger, the art of how you end every episode, how you leave people wanting more, and then hopefully people they crowd around and watch it maybe on a similar day at a similar time.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I agree. I mean, I definitely came up with, network and then premium cable kind of peak TV, where things were coming out week to week. I mean, I remember being at a play and it wasn't so great. It was fine, but The Sopranos was on, and it just like intermission. We were like, we gotta go watch The Sopranos. Like,
Yeah.
and how much fun that was. And yes, like the sort of water cooler, sense of something being in the zeitgeist, and you're talking about it with your friends. And I think for a show as, people are saying dense or a show with a lot of characters and as you learn the show, I think it's nice to have a week to kind of sit with and kind of digest and, for anyone so inclined, maybe even watch again. But like, I love a week to week release. It does feel like it's, I don't know, it gives it a chance to grow. I feel the same thing you do. Like if you don't binge it and other people binge it, then your experience just gets so separated from each other.
Oh, the worst question on any show is like, well, where are you at? What have you seen?
Yeah.
What can we talk about? When you just want to be able to come up and be like, oh my God, did you see last night's episode? Like this.
Right.
Yes. You know exactly where we all are, and we're all on episode 1 or we're all on episode 2. Yeah.
Right.
When you're looking at the overarching arc of your 6 episodes, like how do you figure out what the cliffhanger is? Like talk about the ending of 1 and the ending of 2. Yeah.
Yeah, like I feel like we very much want each episode to have its own identity. And if you really like step back and looked at it, you'd be like, each episode does have a kind of organizing principle to it. And in the premiere, that was very much to see Valia Harkonnen sort of take over the sisterhood in an extreme way at a very fragile time. And she puts a plan in motion in true sort of sisterhood fashion, one that's going to take many years, not quite 10,000 years yet, but still multiple decades to come to pass, and to then pick up in the present and see that actually that plan is now being jeopardized. And what is she going to do now that she spent time preparing for an enemy to emerge, and now that person has? And you're like, and that is really around this wedding. So if this podcast is, I can be spoilery about episode 1. Is that
you can? Yes.
Yeah.
So that wedding is very much like the seeds of that idea are put in the episode, and that wedding is blown apart by the end. And you're like, and that's the bookends that you understand. Like that's what the premiere is kind of showing you. But we will have events both interpersonally with the characters, and then also kind of whatever's happening in the Imperium or in the sisterhood at a given moment that'll, I think, organize the episode in a way that every episode counts. Like I would say, because we only were doing 6, one of the things that was great is we felt like we were able to do 6 really robust episodes where we got to tell big stories where things happened and things are not the same at the end of any episode. Like no episode just filler. Like we're advancing the stakes for the
So
character.
4 is not like a bottle episode for you guys to save some budget. Blow out 5 and 6.
I know, we never did that bottle episode.
All right, so very few people get the opportunity to go to the water cooler and discuss with the showrunner what everyone's talking about. So what can you tell us about Desmond? What can you tell us about Desmond's powers? I specifically kind of want to know if they're unique to him, or do we have other people out there who have survived being swallowed by a sandworm?
That's a very good question. I mean, I think Desmond is definitely a central mystery of the season, sort of who is he? And he does come like this figure that's sort of cloaked in a bit of a prophet, you know, and has a mysterious power that he is attributing to being swallowed by a sandworm and surviving. And we know that the sandworms are very mystical creatures. They're kind of the ancient gods of Arrakis. And so there is a sort of mystery to spice and the properties of spice and the sandworms. And so there is an element of like, okay, is there a mystical element to this man, or is there something else driving what appears to be at first a supernatural power? But I think our sisters are immediately suspicious. And I think that peeling back the layers on like who Desmond is, what is his power, and like you said, and then where does that point to in our episode? You know, that's the season. They'll be fun. There'll be developments. We're gonna tell you who Desmond is. We're gonna learn it with our sisters.
You know, we're talking about the story of the show, but I'm actually interested talking a little bit about your story and kind of how you ended up where you are now in the business. Because I know from a producer perspective, you worked on Charmed and Lost and Fringe, and so I'm just curious about, like, can you walk us through kind of your history, like what were and those experiences on those shows and kind of how they you know, affected you into the person you are now, and how it's kind of helped you create with this show. Do you have things that are particular on those shows that were learning lessons for you?
I mean, absolutely. Every show, I would say, and the way, listen, I came up at a time that was really rich in terms of sort of amassing experience in the craft of writing, and then also in the making of television, because I did start off, I mean, Charmed, for example, that was my foot in the door show. You know, I came to LA with a writing partner sitting in a Borders bookstore, you know, writing query letters, you know, and so like to get a job on Charmed was so exciting. And that was a show that was like, it had found an audience and it was going to go for 3 years. And so for or our contract went for 3 years, the show went for longer, but it was like, we had that luxury of going back to a job or just having a solid learning place to begin our career. And then we went over to Bad Robot, like you said, and really got ensconced in J.J. Abrams's camp, which was super fun because that was a really exciting time to be at Bad Robot. And, you know, J.J. was doing such fresh and fun genre television, and to, you know, be part of sort of figuring out sort of how he, you know, made that recipe, you know, how, and so much of it was loving the characters and trying to ground the story in characters that you would care about. And, but then also being kind of fearlessly cinematic to the degree that you could be, and sort of pushing at that. And that was kind of a great, on all of the shows, the Bad Robot shows I worked on, I felt like I was learning. And then as my career progressed to more leadership positions, whether that was like Altered Carbon or Westworld or coming to Dune, you feel like, oh, then you start amassing other experience, like working with department heads, being on set, what it means to be in the post room, you know, and now you're working with editors and you're cutting, and all of those skills. To me, that's the joy of filmmaking. To sort of reference your earlier question, that is where the showrunner gets to sort of be like a director and has a hand creatively into all these other aspects beyond the writing. And that's like, I mean, it's truly like, for somebody who didn't go to film school, like I learned as I went through the ranks and got more exposure to all those aspects of filmmaking. And then you meet people, and that's the sort of secret weapon is like you're sort of meeting people who are so talented and having relationships to them. And then hopefully you get an opportunity, and you also, it's an opportunity to work with people again and to, I don't know, we assembled quite a crew on Dune Prophecy. And I felt like that's from spending decades in the industry, like to be able to pull together a team.
Sure.
As a quick follow-up, the going from Borders to Charmed. I mean, I went to Borders all the time as a kid. I mean, I can't imagine like what happened? How did you go from writing in the Borders to Charmed?
I'm so glad I didn't really know like how wildly probably the odds were stacked against us. So, you know, because I'm from the East Coast. I'm not from. It was all a mystery to me until I lived in Los Angeles. The notion that people made TV was a bit like rarefied. You're like, I don't know how that happens. And then to live in Los Angeles and, you know, I was studying media. I was getting a communications degree at UCSD, but I kept gravitating to hanging around art students who were making films. And I just started to realize like I think I'd much rather be actually making it. I love thinking about it and I love writing about it. And I really do. I all that stuff I love, but more than anything, I wanted to make it. And so my friend and I just started writing spec scripts, and we went through an old out of date agent directory and sent query letters saying, do you want to read our material? And, you know, you'd send back self-addressed stamped, you know, yes, no.
Maybe,
you know, like, oh, that's a no. But you know, you just need one yes. And we did, and we got one. And we had this sort of Friday that was so exciting, where a manager from an agency called and was like, I want to represent you. I think your material is so great. You're going to have an incredible career. And like, you know, you're on a high. You're like, oh my God, the most amazing thing has just happened. And then on Monday he called and he was like, well, okay, here's the thing. There is a television season, because that's when you used to hire people very much around like a calendar year, like, you know.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Half up. And he was like, and turns out we just missed it. And that's when I realized like, oh, our manager is really green. But it was all we needed. Even so, we sort of fumbled through together, and you know, he helped us get an agent who helped us get to Charmed, and that's what we needed. And
wow,
you look back, and I would go into showrunners' offices and see stacks of spec scripts piled up on, and I was like so glad I never saw that before.
Yeah. Oh God, it'd be so discouraging, right?
Wow.
Yeah, because you would have just been like, I don't know what I'm doing. Yeah.
Wow.
But now you're probably giving opportunities to these fresh faces.
Well,
There's probably
really
people on Dune.
I mean, one of the joys of working at anything in a leadership way is like that ability. And then, you know, in success, you can reward people or let people move up or foster people's careers. And I mean, that's something I think the industry really needs. Like, I think that's become challenging for people to get the experience that they need and to have longevity in any one place.
Sure.
They can be trusted with more stuff to do. And so, yeah, I do try and do that.
So, Alison, I want to go to your Alias days, if we could. We have a friend of the show. He's been on 4 times now, Quentin Tarantino. Did you write the episode where Quentin was a guest star on Alias?
Oh my God.
Was that you?
I don't know. I remember we wrote one where David Cronenberg was the guest star. And I remember writing a scene for him where we talked about like Funyuns, basically, or like we were writing with like synthetic kind of chips into a scene, and he acted the shit out of it. That was like a real, like, I could not believe we were getting a cameo with David Cronenberg. That was kind of a starstruck thing. I don't think I did, you know, if you may know, I mean, it's all a little muddy what was going on back then.
Yeah, he was like an undercover agent, and he had been.
Oh, I remember
missing for a while. Yeah, I thought that was part of your pull. I remember Justin Theroux came on as a love interest for Sydney, and that was fun. And you know, I remember writing this where she dives off a balcony into a swimming pool downtown LA, the Hotel Figueroa, you know.
And that was so fun. I mean, JJ really, I mean, we were just going around all Los Angeles being like, and now we're in Mexico, and now we're in Europe. Like it was very fun. It had such an amazing, playful spirit. I thought that show.
Well,
Yeah.
and all of those shows that you're coming in, this is what I wanted to sort of get at too. You had 22 episodes,
Yeah.
so you could play around. Like, do you miss having that palette, where you can't have a 3-episode arc that just goes off on a tangent someplace?
Yeah, I mean 22 episodes. That was like a great, first of all, great muscle building as a writer. I mean, just kind of being fearless, having to churn it out. Like, I felt, and then story, like you said, like to block out, like, okay, here we go. 9 episodes. You're only in September, 13 episodes, Christmas,
Yeah, it's a marathon.
13 episodes of spring. It's amazing. It's like the Iron Man. Yeah. And also you're doing everything at once. Like you're like, and now we're in prep on everything is simultaneous because it's all going. And, I think it would be challenging. It was always challenging to try and get scope under those circumstances,
Sure. Yeah.
I always appreciated, I think genre and a lot of TV shows reached for it. And I just love being part of a show that's doing that, that's trying.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
I want to bring up score because, and correct me if I'm pronouncing his name right, Volker is
yes.
Right.
Oh, I'm so glad.
And incredible. And one of the things I find interesting about the Dune world, obviously with Denis films is Zimmer's music and kind of like, I say this a lot on the show. It uses the score as a leading character, very similar to how Chris Nolan and all these filmmakers who really understand that score is a character. It's an atmospheric part of it. It's part of the world. But because Zimmer's music is so ingrained in our minds from the Dune films, can you speak about the creating a new score here, but also having it tonally in the world of kind of what Denis and Zimmer did, but also like, do you hint at things? I'm just curious kind of what those conversations are like.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, so much we didn't want to feel like, like you said, Hans Zimmer, integral to Denis films. I would say also creating a music that's very Arrakis in vibe, which is so cool. And the way he built some of his own instruments, but also looked at Mina culture. And, there's so much going on. I love the music in Dune. I think that it also has a alchemy to it. It just has such a real emotional effect on you. And so without employing Zimmer, we wanted a composer that could come and give us our corner of the universe, a sort of signature score, but one that would be exactly like you said, like also be a character on our show.
Yeah.
And that it was a composer of enough strength of voice that it could function that way for us. And I think Volker did a stunning score. I mean, I'm very excited for you to hear what else he has going. It's been a real pleasure to work with an artist of his caliber.
Yeah, that's awesome. I was just curious because when we have the music in mind for something, you have to have someone create something else, but it still lives in that world. And I just wonder.
It's totally true. And let me tell you, Hans Zimmer's so emotional. Like he's so good and he's such a genius. Like, you have to be very careful, like almost to like not get anyone, I wanted Volker to make sure that he had his own lane, because it's so memorable. It's so beautiful. But I really think Volker just rose to the occasion, just gave us something so special for a television score.
Yeah, it's a great score. I mean, that's like you said earlier about the cinematic nature when you were working with Abrams and kind of like these shows feel like movies and like and I do agree the score is exactly like we said with Zimmer. It feels like it's part of the atmosphere of the show. So
yes, sure. Yeah, these are people who care about all aspects, like you said, like the score, and also like just really care about the camera, like really care about like how they're set. I mean, just the whole the whole package.
Well,
Yeah.
another geek that we've had on the show a couple of times is Michael Giacchino, who I'm sure you've had
Oh
some
yeah,
Yeah.
multiple
totally,
times. Yeah,
totally.
another bad
Yes.
robot veteran. So
As a quick follow-up to the first question I asked earlier about the different directors in the show, I believe you also have 3 cinematographers who worked on
Yes.
the show as well. And kind of in a similar vein of that, Greg Fraser's cinematography in the Dune films is obviously iconic in that sense.
Yeah.
Every cinematographer lights things differently, shoots things differently. Does that
Yep.
also apply to the way you approach that when you have different
Yeah.
DPs step in?
Totally. I mean, and Pierre Gill was our sort of came for the premiere and worked with Anna on her episodes. And he did second unit on the Dune films and is a friend of Denise. And I think like came with a lot of sort of sensibility for Dune. Had sort of, it was not like it was something he had, I think a lot of feelings about and a lot of love for, and wanted to do justice to the lighting on our show in a way that at least could be in keeping with the universe, and bring out some of those colorful palettes. Like there's whole spaces where we're in that are orange and others that are green, others that are kind of blue, and just I don't know. He had a very passionate take, but then our other DPs also, again, it was sort of the reward that the directors got too. They were lighting other planets, so they also had to room to flex. And there's some decisions made in our flashback episode that's coming up in episode 3 that I feel like are so beautiful. And that was really our DP Richard Donnelly working with Richard Lewis on how to do that planet. So everybody had fun stuff to work with.
that's awesome. All right, Alison, we'll get you out of here on this one. I just want you to be able to speak to, because I've been able to look ahead to a couple of episodes, the visions that allow you to sort of play around with unexpected genres. People might understand that they're going into this getting science fiction, but I actually saw some influences of horror.
Yes.
I thought. Were you trying to pull from the horror genre, especially the one where Lila's poisoned and is coming out of that really horrific vision?
Yeah, we were. I mean, especially in that episode you mentioned, episode 2, and there will be other moments that I think to me veer to horror, to body horror, to, and I think that there's a mystery that comes with that. I think Dune is exploring kind of like what it means to be human in ways that are disconcerting and uncanny. And I think there's a psychological element always to Dune, and it's both the visions that people have and just the our sisters are carrying around the voices of their female ancestors, and how do they unlock that is sort of, I think, what you're referring to, which is a very dangerous process and we didn't want to shy away from. But yeah, I think a little psychological horror goes a long way. I definitely want to have that flavor in Dune.
That's awesome. It's definitely there. Alison, thank you so much for taking the time on the day after your premiere. This has really been exciting to have you on the show. And
thank you. Thank you. It's been a real pleasure. I appreciate it. I look forward to keeping up with what you guys are talking about on your show.
Thanks for taking us through the history of your work too. It's amazing what you've done in like all the shows you've worked on. It's really cool to talk to you about that stuff. So thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure. Well, have a good day.
We want to thank our good friends at HBO Max for getting us Alison on the show. And of course, for Alison for coming on. I thought she was an extremely interesting person to get on and talk about putting a show together in this day and age. And specifically the idea of going from, so when she's doing Lost, she's doing 22 episodes in a season. And now she sits down to sort of break down the Dune legacy and Frank Herbert's work. And she gets 6 episodes to do so on a show. You would think that's a challenge, but I loved what she talked about, how it meant that you don't have any down episodes, that every single episode can be jam-packed, filled with plot twists and character development and some big spoilers that are coming. And, even if you get to the end of episode 1, you realize that some truly shocking things happen and make you think differently about different characters, and the cast in general, I thought was really, really good. So I went from, with Dune Prophecy, the first episode, me being kind of confused by what they were trying to do, going into episode 2, really figuring out a little bit more what the story was going to be, a little bit more where the world building was going to go, and to the point where like I'm on board now. I'm going to watch it through season 1 and see where it goes, how it develops. So I was really happy to get Alison on. Coming up on Friday, we're going to be back with a brand new full show, and we're going to have John David Washington joining us to talk about the piano lesson and a lot of stuff going on in his family and stuff with his career. And we also have a couple of other really big ones on the horizon. We've got Giovanni Ribisi, who is a cinematographer on Strange Darling, a movie that we've been raving about all year. We have the Farrelly brothers for their film that's coming out soon with Jack Black called Dear Santa. And a few other irons in the fire that we hope to get to. I think we're also going to be reviewing on the show coming up Gladiator and Wicked. So yeah, it feels like I said, things are super busy. This is why you're getting bonus episodes from us, because we have so much content. Oh yeah, The Order is another movie that's coming out in December. We have Jude Law and Nicholas Hoult paired for that, which is incredible. We'll be doing our normal end of the year top 10 lists as we get through those and start to look ahead to what's coming in 2025. Basically, what it means is you're going to want to keep it here on ReelBlend's channels so that you can keep up with everything that we are putting out. If you're on the YouTube channel, hit subscribe, turn on your notifications. As always, share the show with a friend of yours or a family member who loves movies and wants to geek out about it as much as possible. I thought it was really funny. There was a comment underneath one of the most recent episodes that was like, someone said something about ReelBlend dropping, and then another person called them a geek. And they were like, "What? Who do you do?" I mean, this is the audience of this shit. It's what we are. We fully embrace this. And I was like, yeah, that's right. Stand up for us. That's we're the nerds who are, in a circle talking about movies in the corner of the cafeteria. So keep it here. We got a lot of stuff, good stuff coming, great interviews, exciting reviews, and all the normal stupid stuff that we do. Talk to you guys soon.